CBR fam?
Yeah.
We back in 2024. What's good, y'all?
First show of the year. Happy New Year to the Chondro Bar Room family.
Keno all blacked out. He got a pair of black Air Force Ones on.
I'm not about to beat nobody up, dog. Excuse me.
But hey, we glad to be back. We glad the holiday season is finally over, so we can get back to some normalcy in our lives.
Yeah.
We hope
You ain't never lied, man.
y'all
You
had
talking
a
about,
great holiday season.
you talking about in the pre-show, man. How them last couple weeks of the year, it seems like they all go run together.
Yeah, it's like you do a whole bunch of shit to prep for a holiday. The holiday happens, you want to take a fucking nap, and then you do it twice in a row.
Yeah, you got to put deal shit together.
But yeah, we are happy to be back. Tonight is our first Keeper Clash with Bill Stegal and Ryan Young. We're gonna keep the intro here pretty short because we got a lot to get through.
Yeah.
This is not gonna be like the normal show. Listen, these guys, they're gonna explain their own version of doing things, and it's gonna be kind of reminiscent of the Texas Legends episode. But we're gonna keep it flowing. They're gonna be several 10-minute rounds, and it's gonna be a good time tonight.
We're gonna bring you these keyboard clashes. I ain't gonna
first
say that.
Tuesday of every month.
Okay, all right. So first Tuesday every month.
Yeah, they're already
first of the month.
set up. They're already set up for several months.
Yeah, we like yeah. So we like 4-5 months in.
Yeah,
we're gonna bring you this
6 months
on the
in.
first. 6 months. Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just gonna do this, man. For the first week of every month, we're gonna bring you. We're gonna kind of step back a little bit and bring you two big heads, two big icons that y'all can learn from a little bit. Kind of like the next phase of CBI, you know. Y'all.
One of them, we got a couple of them that are younger icons, guys that are doing it. That may not have decades underneath their belt, but they know what the fuck they talk about.
Yep.
So this is going to be a good balance.
Chris said he got 3 Neos coming this week. What up, Bill? John Jones.
What's your life, bro?
DD.
Congratulations, Bill, once again. Happy holidays. What up, Chris? What up, Adam?
Willis.
Cousin Tuck.
Adam, yeah, man.
What up, Trey?
Congratulations again, Bill.
What up, Dee Salamander, John Jones. Who else is there?
Congratulations again, Bill.
Cousin Earls. But yeah, I'm gonna let you. I don't have anything to talk about as far as anything to say. So I'll let you go.
I ain't gonna hold y'all this week. Look, man, this is Happy New Year. I'm glad to see all our members made it. We ain't lose nobody, fortunately. I hope the holidays was kind to you and your family. And let's rock out, man. Chondro Bar Room back in effect, baby, y'all.
All right, we're gonna bring our 2 guests in. Y'all show them some love.
I saw Bridges in Texas.
We got Mr. Ryan Young and Mr. Bill Stegal, aka Dollar Bill and the Molecule, man. Hey Ryan, I ask you this question, man.
Yes,
Do you
sir.
read Marvel Comics?
No, I don't.
So you don't know who the Molecule Man is?
Nope.
He's probably like top 3 strongest characters in the Marvel universe.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, he does a whole bunch of terrible shit over and over again.
Sounds like me.
He's not a hero at all. He's just a big ass problem. Not a villain either.
You got the right man.
Hey, I'll take what I can get.
Hey, you got to. All right, so we're gonna let you guys do a quick intro, and then we'll get into our first. We'll get in our first topic. So we'll let you go first, Bill, since you're first on the screen.
All right. Well, first of all, Happy New Year to you guys and everybody that's watching now or will be watching in the future. Hope it was good. Hope the Christmas was good. It's good to see everybody back. So thanks for having me on tonight. Secondly, Travis, love the shirt, man. Damn, fucking repping that thing. Molecular rep molecular reptile shirt, but gosh, I don't have.
Well, I don't even have any anymore either. Got to go back to the screen printer soon.
They stopped making those in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, something like that.
This is gonna be fun. I can tell y'all this is gonna be fun.
I mean, I would do a brief introduction, but I would rather kind of introduce how I got to meet Ryan and a little bit about our relationship, because it's pretty fun.
Go ahead.
I knew Ryan online, probably the way everybody knows other people through social media. Ryan, I would say, is probably a little lower key than a lot of us online social media platforms. But I knew who he was, but I got to meet him in person in Philadelphia at the most recent Carpet Fest. And if you have not hit one of those up, I'd highly recommend it. It's always a good time. Eric Burke and Owen McIntyre put that on. They're primarily carpet python guys, but it's a community of, just like everything else, people that just like reptiles. So went out there and met Ryan out there, and other great people were out there. I mean, I met Justin Julander out there, and to be able to talk to Ryan and Justin in particular for many hours was really, the night went by fast.
Yeah, it did.
Didn't it go by fast?
Yep.
And I'll tell you right off of the bat, I was always a little bit leery of Ryan Young.
The lounge chair killer.
And I'll tell you why. Molecular reptiles, right? Molecular. That sounds awful damn scientific. And you know how I feel about scientific shit in chondros.
Yeah, we know. We heard about it for like 3 weeks.
we know that shit. So I was guarded when I first met Ryan Young, and but I figured out very quickly there that we were two peas in a pod.
Oh yeah.
Some differing opinions, but just socially and the way we interact, our sense of humor, all right on key, and so we became pretty good friends there. And,
yep.
And then Ryan was gracious enough to work out a very busy schedule and make it down to my party, Travis, where I think both you guys have met Ryan, but I can't remember. Did you meet Ryan at my?
I haven't met Ryan yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm meet him at.
I met Ryan at your party because I was.
Yeah.
I was gonna tell everybody. I was gonna let you tell everybody. So, one of the things about us doing this show is like I got to see these two titans have a discussion that was very interesting.
Yes, we talked about it. That's
so
I am
so
thirsty.
I felt it'd be. I don't want to go far into it. So I felt it was very. I wanted the first one of these to be between you two, because I know you guys can both talk your shit and back it up.
Well, just kind of to finish off the little story, because I wanted Ryan to say a few things. So he came to the party, Travis, that you were at, and again, we just kind of solidified our friendship. And even more importantly than that, our wives got along.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
that was the cherry on top, because they just. I think spent a couple hours, just making fun of Ryan and I, about all this.
Talking about how y'all dumbass keep these snakes and be in the snake
Yeah,
room all day.
at the
Exactly.
Morelia Pythons gathering, my wife wasn't there, but your wife was, and listening to her talk, I was like, wow, she has had the exact same experience as my wife.
I was just like your wife.
And I just thought, our wives would totally hit it off. So I had to, luckily with my wife's family living in Dallas, we were able to finagle that last second trip to get down there and hang out. So that was really fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And I appreciate you having me out. So it was a good time.
It was a good time.
Travis' wife and Mars was bonding over here intently about how making fun of us about how we be on the phone and shit.
Well,
right in your face too. Right in your face.
All right, Ryan, we'll let you have at it.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and
love you.
I hope everybody did have a great holiday season, and hopefully 2024 will bring prosperity to all of us.
Absolutely.
All right, so you guys ready to get this thing started?
Sure thing.
All right, Ryan, since you talk last, you get to call it in the air.
All right. Tails.
It fell.
This is why Travis didn't play sports.
I play a lot of sports. I play a
football,
lot of
in
sports.
football, he was on the defensive line because he can't catch. You don't got hands.
That is true. I was a tight end for a while. All right, so it's heads. All right,
Blocking
so go
tight end.
first. Yeah, I didn't really want to catch the damn ball anyway. What you call again, Ryan?
Tails.
All right, so Bill, do you want to go first or you want to go second?
I'll go first.
All right. So the question is intake. What is your procedure for receiving animals or imports? How do you prepare for the animals before they come? What are you setting them up in? And what does your quarantine look like? And what are you looking for? And I know you got a ton of animals and you're probably not getting new animals right now, but just back when you were receiving animals.
Yeah.
So we'll start the timer now.
Yeah, I've really only ever received that I can think of 2 imports into my collection ever. And that was a long time ago. But I would,
Tuck you out.
I do get some captive bred stuff into my collection. I got one from Patrick this last year. And basically pretty standard quarantine stuff, keep it away from the other animals. I did a 60-day quarantine, and back in the day, we thought all of these things needed to be quarantined because they had opportunistic pathogens, bacteria in their mouth, and they could be fine in that animal, but you introduce them into your animal and it could wreak havoc in, respiratory infections and all that. And I think we probably pretty much figured out by now 90% of that was a NIDO positive animal.
Yeah.
So the hallmark of my quarantine now stems around testing for NIDO. I think that's an absolute must. Got to have. And what I like to do is I like to have the person do the NIDO test before I receive the animal, and then I retest it within a week of getting the animal. And that does a couple things. It obviously tests, if the animal has NIDO or not, but I don't want to go back to somebody, or I don't want to have somebody come back to me 6 months later and say, hey, this animal has NIDO. Well, 6 months later, how the hell am I supposed to know, where it came from? I want the person to test it within the week that they got it. If I'm sending it out, and if I'm getting it in, I'll test it the first week that I have it, and make sure that first NIDO is negative, and then go from there.
Go.
So Ryan, you can go if you want to.
Okay. Well, the majority of my adult breeder collection is imports. I keep them away from the other animals. I have not tested for NIDO. If I had a snake that had a respiratory infection, I would probably test for NIDO, but I haven't. Knock on wood, I haven't had that so far. I'm not.
Nice.
I'm not entire. I do all my captive bred babies are kept in a different area from my adults. I'm basically building a locality specific captive bred collection, but obviously I had to start with the majority of that's wild snakes.
Yep.
I'm not sure if I tested and I got a positive, I'm not even sure what I would do if the snake never exhibits symptoms. I'm not sure I would be able to put it down. So the evidence out there appears to be if you keep your babies away from your adults and practice decent practices of, not. I don't go in my adult room and then go in my baby room. I'll only go in the baby room and then when I'm done in there, I'll do adult stuff, and that's it. And I'm pretty anal retentive about the groups of snakes I have. I'll typically import chondros in small groups for whatever, or not. I don't import them directly, but when I get them, I try to get a group at the same time, and then I basically treat that group almost as if they're in permanent quarantine. I won't. I don't even usually clean different groups on the same day. I'll just and feeding. I'll change, hand sanitize different tongs for different groups. So I really try to limit any ability for anything to go from one to the other. But typical 60, 90 days, I really keep crazy them away from my other stuff. Basically, the biggest thing I'm trying to make sure is they don't have pets, i.e. mites.
Yeah.
Get rid of the mites. And then I usually will get them eating. Once they're eating, I'll start treating them for internal parasites.
What's up, Randy?
That's that.
Ryan makes a great point that I didn't hit on. Patrick mentioned it in the comments. It's just order of operation, right?
Yeah.
My order of operation is always baby room, main room, quarantine room. And then once you get those areas, you don't go back.
Yeah.
Unless it's shower, change clothes, just order of operations.
Yep. No, my wife will give me a hard time. Sometimes I'll come in at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. She's like, "You're done working?" I'm like, "Well, I had to clean some cages and now I'm not doing anything else." So she laughs at me and she's like, "Don't you think that's overblown?" But it works so far.
So when you guys get these new animals in, do you guys, how do you guys feed these animals? Because I know, and it's not a question about cleaning tongs, but it's a question of establishing these animals in your own collection.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, are we going back and forth, or is this the same question, or what?
It's part of the same question.
Okay, then I'll go.
It's a deeper part of it.
It's a simple answer for me. The stuff that I get in is always eating great. I don't have to worry about establishing an imported animal. The very few animals that I've brought in here, it's been literally like just open the tub and give them a damn mouse, and they eat. So.
Yeah, honestly, the wild ones typically aren't that hard to get to eat either.
Yeah.
If you set them up, with your basic setup, the simpler the better on paper towels. It's remarkable. Most of them eat in the first 2 times you try, and usually once they start eating, I'll feed them way differently than I'll feed my established snakes. I'll feed them a lot because they're typically, somewhat skinny,
malnourished.
So I really try to get them eating, get them to, go to the bathroom, and then start treating them for whatever internal friends they have.
Okay. So do you guys check for worms first, like through a vet, or do you just administer Panicure?
I use what is it? Praziquantel and fenbendazole.
Fenbendazole,
yeah. Those are the 2 I use. I've only ever got like 5 captive red chondros in my entire career.
None for me.
That is a complete opposite.
Yeah, I was laughing because this year I did a bloodline swap for some captive bred Maniquaris, and it really tripped me out. I had to think, like, is this the first time that this has ever happened? And it is the first time. That was the first time I'd ever gotten a captive bred baby from somebody. I had gotten a couple older captive bred animals over the years, but those were the first 2 neos I'd ever gotten from anybody.
Bizarre. And I've never treated a chondro for parasites.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Bill, so like your first clutch, you said it was a root to a root. How did you go about that?
Well, the Aru to Aru that I had, they were long-term captive animals. They had been treated long ago by the person that had them before me. And so they were hatched in captivity. I didn't do anything with those babies.
Okay.
Yeah, I've bred a couple of chondros that I never treated, and chondros are pretty good about their biology. They can clean themselves out to some degree because they don't reinfest themselves very easily.
Yeah.
Like they don't live on the ground crawling around in their feces.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, I've seen imports poop worms out before I even panicured them.
oh yeah.
I don't know
Usually
if
the
that's
first
I
time
don't
they
know if
take
that's
a dump, it looks like Medusa.
yeah. I don't know if that's like that first like them acclimating to captivity or something, but I've seen that before panicure.
Yep.
You go in there and see little
Oh
snakes
yeah, no,
crawling around in the water
that's very
in the water
difficult.
ball.
Nasty.
Nasty.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I think we killed this topic. Y'all want to move on to the next one?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
I think Ryan won that round.
No, there's no winner, Bill.
Ain't no
Bill,
winner.
there's literally no winner.
Most people would argue I'm the loser because I've got so many imports. So.
I think that's just how it goes if you have imports. Okay, so the second topic is tools of the trade. This is just your all your tools that you use for your snakes, tongs, caging, lighting, all that stuff. So what do you look for when you're picking equipment? What have you found that works and what doesn't work? And do you have must-have equipment that you have used over the years that you would say is tried and true? We'll let you start that one off, Ryan, and go.
Well, caging, I've always made my own cages. I've just never found the commercial stuff to my liking. So I just have always made my own. I use those exoterras a lot. Those work actually pretty good despite what everybody says. But
God damn.
Where you located? Where you
How old are
located?
you?
Man?
how old? 45.
Where you located?
North Idaho.
No, I don't. Okay. So then, you don't have problems in the winter?
No, they are in a dedicated snake room that's very well insulated and has relatively high relative ambient humidity. So they do fine.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying I would recommend everybody do it that way. I'm just saying, given my snake room conditions, I can throw them in an exoterra tank and they do just fine. But,
Okay, so what about lighting and heating too?
I just use ambient light from the lights in the room, and then heating. I predominantly don't use any heat. If I do, I use a ceramic heat emitter, like a 25 watt, in a little fixture, and I don't use a thermostat. It's on for 12 hours and off for 12 hours.
Wait, hold on.
What?
He knows mine.
Hold on. So you damn, I got caught up. So you don't use the thermostat though?
No.
Even with the CEHs?
No, my cages all have fairly open tops, and the bulb is so small, and it only takes up 4 inches in a tiny area that they couldn't overheat them if it wanted to. And that's part of the reason I ended up going that route. Back in the day, I'd heard too many stories about probes getting dislodged or sat on, and then those big, huge relative heat panels cooking their snakes. So I just the heat panels. I mean, I want to like them, but all of them are too big for what I want to do. So I just use the old school method.
Yeah.
But tongs are a must-have, obviously, and probably, I mean, the more tongs, the better. Probably the riskiest thing we do as far as pathogen prevention is using tongs on lots of snakes. That's probably your weakest link for the most part. And water bowls, I do nothing but disposable water bowls. So I don't wash the bowl very often, just the sleeve, put it in there and throw it away. Limit my cross contamination risk.
What do you use it for disposable water bowls?
It's just like a 4-inch ceramic crock for a dog, and then you can put a 4-inch deli cup in there, either 12 ounce or 16 ounce.
Okay. All right, Bill, take it away.
Yeah, so I think as far as husbandry, caging, unlike Ryan, I do have humidity issues here. So I need to have a cage that holds heat and humidity well. And for me, that's usually PVC cages. And, it's always functionality over appearance. I'm lucky enough that a lot of my stuff has both. My friends at Focus produce a badass cage that's
Fancy.
functional, but the stuff looks like furniture.
Shout out to
Good
Ashley and
people.
Steven.
So
Good people like good cheeses.
what's that?
Good people that like good cheese.
Absolutely. So, for me, I have to have functionality. I have to have that, and I need to have a cage that will hold heat well because, unlike Ryan, I do use radiant heat panels, and so I'm not working in an ambient setting. I'm working in a room temperature setting, and I do have my heat panels are on during the day, but they all go off at night. So I'm able to have a cool down period, and in the winter, like this time of year, I really like a nice brisk nighttime cool down temperature. So I'll get my room temps and the cage temps will get 68 to 70 degrees. But I'm able to lower to that temperature because during the day, they're back on to the mid 80s. That one spot's 84, 85 degrees. And so they can get that daytime heat. But for me, I really think the temperature cycling is really important. It's probably of all the cycling things that I do, temperature cycling I think is the most effective. And so I want to be able to really bring those nighttime temps down low. And so I feel like I'm able to do that safely if I can get the daytime temps, back up. So that's kind of my caging. I think Ryan brings out a great point about the tongs. I have dedicated tongs to each area, not necessarily every animal or cage, but every area has their own dedicated tongs. I usually have a couple of, 2-3 different tongs, and I'm the master of the Clorox wipe. I use those Clorox wipes every single time I feed. That tong gets a little Clorox wipe, goes to the next one.
What you just do, Bill, with your hand?
Don't do that again.
What you just do with your hand, Bill?
Don't do that.
What's that?
Bill ignored it. Listen, you and Keto got something in common with these Clorox wipes because I don't like Clorox wipes as much as Keno. Keno swears by them. I like paper towels and rubbing alcohol.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so
what's the difference?
It's a lot cheaper.
I use it all, man. F10, Clorox wipes,
F10,
all of it.
Everything.
F10.
Got these other wipes. Got the alcohol wipes too. Got everything.
Chlorhexidine. I usually dip my tongs in chlorhexidine for a while.
Yeah, I heard that too. Have like a separate cup.
And I'm a big just dishwashing liquid soap. Dawn antibacterial dishwashing soap. A lot of my cages, tubs, they get cleaned with that. It says right on the label, kills 99% of bacteria and virus.
Yep.
Can I say something? I think a lot of people assume if you're an ambient guy that you don't cycle your snakes temperature wise, and that's in my case that is not true. I cycle down to 68 to 70 myself.
Okay. During the breeding season, during your
alcohol.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think we agree. Temperature cycling it's a very effective method. It's been used since the beginning, right? I mean.
Oh yeah. No, the sweet spot is the food and temperature together seems to be.
Absolutely.
That's where you can really dial it in.
Well, it'd be great. I'd love to hear Ryan's method of food cycling. I food cycle as well. But I was telling somebody the other day, I think if you asked 10 different chondro breeders that food cycle how they do it, you'd get 10 different answers. All
There's no standard. It's kind of a standard for temp, but it's not one for food cycle.
Absolutely. There seems to be a standard for temperature, but the food cycling is all over the board. And I really recently, just within the last 3 years, started doing that. And I noticed my results, really, were quite good when I started doing it. So I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah,
So I
I think you bring up a good point there. All of this stuff is what works for us individually, and there is no one way to get this job done. There's many combinations that'll get it done, and so that when I was coming up, I tend to ask a lot of people questions, and most people would have 25 things they would tell you, but 2 things everybody told you, and it's like those 2 things are the really important stuff.
Here's what makes it so hard, though. You can do everything right and not be successful, or you can do everything wrong and get a clutch. So that makes it hard,
Well, and it's like it's really tough too to even talk to people about like what you do versus what they can do given their situation. It's extremely difficult for me personally to try to tell other people what to do because I do it, unless somebody has a dedicated snake room and is comfortable doing the ambient. Otherwise, it's hard for me to tell them what they should or shouldn't do because it's not how I do it. So it's just is what it is.
So you don't, Ryan, I wanted to ask you something. So even when your female has, ovulating and she's cooking the eggs, you don't even temp gun either?
No, well, at that point, once they ovulate and have their prelay shed, I stick them in a rack. I don't leave them in their cage.
Okay.
Yeah. So you guys killed that second topic. Let's move on to the third. So the third is medical protocol. What is your process once you realize you have an animal that requires? What are you doing?
Read the comments, man. Cal is an asshole.
Okay, I saw that. I'm gonna ignore that.
I just saw it.
Next week,
it's hard to unsee it.
Next week, Kyle, we're gonna have bar court for Keno. So make sure that you show up. So medical protocol. What is your process once you realize you have an animal that requires medical care? Do you keep any medication on hand? It doesn't have to necessarily be prescription. And what are things that you dealt with that you treated yourself, and how did you treat those things? Bill, we're going to start with you first, and go.
It's going to be a pretty quick answer for me. I've been super blessed. I have not had a whole lot of medical issues, especially in the green trees. I've had prolapse. I've treated prolapse myself. I've treated prolapse successfully, and I've treated prolapse unsuccessfully, but I've never sought professional veterinary care for prolapse. I'm talking about prolapse in neonates. I've never had an adult animal prolapse. The only thing that I have done is, and I keep 4-TAZ on hand, which is ceftazidime, 3rd generation cephalosporin, broad spectrum antibiotic, that if I have an animal that's showing sign of respiratory infections, I will begin treatment with 4-TAZ. And depending on the animal and how it's doing, the level of severity, I'll bring it to a vet that I trust here, an exotic specialist that will actually do tracheal cultures, and then you can treat bacterial agents based on that. But at least I'm able to get a dose or 2 of 4-TAZ in, and most of the time, if they're going to have an antibiotic, it's going to be sensitive to 4-TAZ. So that's what I do, what I've done. Again, I've been blessed. I haven't had to do that, and I can't even think of the last time. But I have had to do it. Well, I can't think. I had an animal that not too long after I moved into this facility, which has been a little over 4 years ago. I had an animal that came down with a respiratory infection. I did that protocol. She ended up passing, and it was one of the incidences where she had an infection that was resistant to Portaz, and by the time we got the cultures back, she just didn't make it. But that's my answer. Prolapse, respiratory infections.
Before we go to Ryan, did you think that she caught that respiratory infection from the move?
I mean, there's a million things that could have happened. I mean, sometimes these things have as simple as they break off a tooth, and the tooth doesn't go to the right place, sticks in their lip, sticks in their gum. They can get a mouth infection like that. Some of the stuff is so random. I've had a neonate like strike at its first meal and like completely grab the meal and fold itself in half and break its back. I mean, stuff just And ironically, the snake lived and is fine. It just has this big Z in its back, but
it's a guard back.
Yeah, it does everything just fine. I mean, I've dealt with the baby prolapses. That's probably the biggest baby issue you run into. I think I've had one older snake have a prolapse, and that was real simple to fix. I've lost a couple babies, but I'm pretty good about getting the baby prolapses back in. And then I think it was like 2017 was the last time I had a chondro with an RI, and it was during the breeding season, coldest part of the year. And all I did was turn. I gave her a 40-watt heat emitter. She sat under it, and she was fine. I didn't give her any drugs or anything.
How y'all treating the prolapses in the babies?
Sugar and a large sexing probe, reinserting it, usually with like some KY on it or something.
Same here, and it's always good to have another pair of hands to do that.
Oh man, I wish.
Depends on what you're talking about, Bill.
Dude, listen, I've had my wife help me with doing prolapse, and all I have to do is hold the baby's head. She straightens the baby's body out, and I take that probe with my other hand, and then, like Ryan said, it's almost like reverse sexing an animal. They're going caudally, you go rostrally towards the head, cephalad, and but the key is you have to have that body straight. If you try to do that when the body's moving or has an S shape in it or something like that, it'll never happen.
Yep.
Why do you think what led to the baby's prolapse?
The food. Pinkies are just shit food.
Too big a meal or too small?
No, has nothing to do with the size. Just pinkies are a shit meal. There's nothing. They're supposed to eat lizards. They're not supposed to, like. I don't know. Have you ever experimented with a baby chondro? Give it like a mouse thigh, and it takes a dump like an adult. You give it a pinky, and it, takes a pudding dump.
Yep. That's exactly how it looks.
Shit.
Yeah, they're trying to squeeze that pudding out is what causes the prolapse.
The same thing with you, Bill. Your babies that prolapse, they were still pinkies.
Yeah, absolutely. There's kind of a time frame when my babies prolapse. It's usually anywhere from like 4 meals in to 15 meals in. That's kind of the window of when you're going to see prolapse almost all of the time. And I agree with Ryan 100% that if you are ruling out hydration, then prolapse. And I'll tell you something else that I discovered this year is I think I had a genetic abnormality in a clutch of babies that caused prolapse. But I think that's very unusual. I've never had that before. But I think if you're just talking about a random one neo out of a clutch that prolapses, it's probably it's food related, and
Yeah, I was so tired of prolapses this year from previous years that I actually didn't feed. I started all my hatchlings on legs and then I switched them to eating 2 legs, and then they would eat rat legs, and once they could eat a big fuzzy mouse, then I switched them to mice.
And you did what I did, except instead of doing the legs, I went with chicken gizzard strips, pieces of chicken gizzard, cut the approximate size of a pink.
Yeah.
So for the same reasons.
So, Bill, you stopped using pinkies altogether?
No. What I would do, I would usually get them established, at least eating 1 or 2 pinkies. And once I knew they had figured it out, and again, those are chick down. Once I could get a couple of meals in them, then I would start alternating pinkies every other week with the strips of gizzard. And I did that, I did that until really they had their first 15 to 20 meals. And then I like Ryan said, then by that time they're usually eating something with pretty good sized mass, either a large pink or a peach fuzzy. Or what I also started doing this last year was introducing ASF pinks.
Yeah, because they got the fur.
And I'm telling you, they have fur. ASF pinks have fur on them.
Yep.
So whether it's just, like Ryan said, who knows? This is like all anecdotal stuff like, oh, I didn't have a prolapse, so it must be the best thing ever. That's BS. You're just trying to give these things the absolute best chance they have.
Yeah, I just judged the reason I did what I did was based on looking at the turds I was seeing. And it was just they were having miniature microscopic adult style turds. Yeah. Not those pasty, nasty.
Yeah, the long little strip.
Yeah. And I can't help but think that's gotta be a big contributor to the prolapse issue.
So, a question: do you guys keep anything on hand for like things like abrasions or things like that?
I've got betadine and hydrogen peroxide.
Even the bacitracin ointment you can get over the counter, that works good too on small abrasions.
They're actually remarkably resilient. I'll tell you a funny story about a chondro years ago. The first male chondro I ever had back in the day, I ended up making a OSB cage for him, and I used fiberglass resin for the inside of the cage, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't use the proper hardener for the fiberglass resin, and I had a heat panel, one of the old style ones where it came down and had a lip, and the chondro crawled between the panel and the fiberglass resin cage wall and literally got glued to the fiberglass. And I peeled that snake off, and parts of the snake remained on the fiberglass. And that snake I never put anything on it. I never did anything, and that snake was totally fine. So they do have a remarkable ability to heal.
Yeah, some do. Some do. Some don't.
Yeah, I mean, every individual is different. But if your husbandry is up to par and the snake is in good health, then they're typically pretty tough.
So we killed topic number 3. We're gonna move to topic number 4. So climatization. We touched on this before. So you guys are both keeping multiple species in, in similar rooms and larger rooms. So how do you guys keep proper climate year round? And you guys talked about changing ambient for breeding and tip dropping if you guys want to go back to that part. But one of the biggest things is how do you guys prepare for major weather changes like winterization and like summertime? Because here in Texas we have heat waves. How do you guys prepare that building or that room for that? And we will start with who started first? Let's go. Bill. So is Ryan's turn.
Okay, for me personally, my room is the big snake building the big room that I have was purpose built for snakes. It's all got closed cell fiberglass, or not fiberglass, but spray foam insulation, and it's heated with oil-filled heaters on a thermostat. And in the summertime, it gets hot. I don't have air conditioning, and even we get real hot up here. The difference between our hot up here and Bill's hot down south is our hot goes away at night. Even in the hottest part of the year, we're in the 60s at night. Even if it's 110, it'll be 60, 64 at night. Most nights it's in the 50s, regardless if it's 100 degrees. So worst case scenario, my room, I've seen my room as hot as like 87, 88 for a couple hours in the afternoon. And then it slowly drops back down to 82 at night. And I can open the windows and help that along, but I wanted to do air conditioning. I just never did it. And then I don't like how air conditioning dries the air out. So I opted. It freaked me out when it would happen. It would get hot. But since I'm not running heat panels and I'm not running extra heat on anything at that point during the summer, the snakes don't care. And then for winter, I'm prepared with like backup generators. But other than that, I don't do anything. The winter is what it is. I cycle when I cycle, no matter what's going on outside.
Okay.
Bill, you guys had like a freeze storm a couple of years ago. How did you get through that?
Yeah, that was the freeze of February 2021, and that's
when my son was born.
Is that right?
He was born that Sunday when it started storming.
The start of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was 1 in 100 years, or maybe 1 in 500 year event here, wow. And boy, that was tough on a lot of people. A lot of people lost animals down here because they just didn't have the ability to. When you lose power, and we lost power here for 7 days. We had alternating power, an hour on, 2 hours off. But when you have the temps as low as we had for as long as we did, and the infrastructure that we had here, not prepared for it, it was really, really brutal. And, a lot of people lost a lot of animals. I housed 300 extra animals in my facility during a 5 to 7 day period that people brought. I was able to keep here, but super lucky. I had a Generac generator on the facility here. Travis, you've been to my place. It's climate controlled, and I've got the generator on it, and that thing was a freaking miracle. For 7 days, our power went off and on every hour, every 2 hours, and every hour, every 2 hours. That Generac generator would cycle back on, cycle back off, cycle back on, cycle back off. Never skipped a beat. My facility temperatures never moved an inch. So super lucky. And again, I'd had that generator for 2 years, and it never went off. And I was thinking to myself, did I just blow a lot of money on this generator? And I have it monitored and all that shit, and all of a sudden in a 1 week period, it literally saved my facility.
It was there when you needed it.
So, but again, most people, first of all, that's not going to happen most of the time. Most people do not keep their animals in a dedicated facility. They're keeping them in their house, right? If they're lucky, a spare room or a closet or whatever. Yeah. Now, a lot of the stuff that Ryan and I talk about aren't going to be applicable to the people that are keeping and trying to breed green trees in their house or wherever. So it's so dependent on where you live. Ryan's going to have different temperature problems than I'm going to have. I bought that generator because I thought I was going to have temperature problems in the summer. I thought I was going to have outages and my room would get too hot in the summer. I never dreamed that we'd have this week in February of 2021 where it was just snowmageddon down here.
Yeah, no, we lost power for 5 days here from a tree falling during the winter and took out the power pole that my power comes from. And since I'm very rural, it only affected a few houses out here, and we were like the last people to get our power back. But I just ran on a generator the whole time. I don't have a backup one that does what Bill's does, so I had to put gas in it all the time. But I kept it going, and I heat my house with a wood stove in that instance, so I was fine there. But it's
This man is
Shit
just
with a
out here,
wood
little
stove.
house on the prairie. It's just-
Listen,
Yeah.
once your collection comes up to a certain size, or even not, I would be prepared. And you can have a generator, and it doesn't cost you an arm and leg to have a generator that will at least run enough heat to keep your animals safe. For a couple day, 3-4 day period. So, even before I moved out here and had that, I had a portable generator that was probably much like Ryan's, where I'd be out there at 3 o'clock in the morning pouring gas into it. But at least I had it, and you'll really, really be glad you have it when you.
Well, you can get. I mean, there's some decent ones, $300-$400. I mean, it's not a huge investment. Mine, I have plugs wired into my panels, one in my house and one in my snake building, so I don't have to run any extension cords. I just run one cord from the generator to there, and then there's just an automatic transfer switch on the in the service panel. So I use all the wiring. I don't have to run any extension cords or any of that.
And I think this is like a good time to just say, all of us, the four of us, and I can guarantee you every single person in the chat has spent significant time and resources on their animals, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, we have spent a lot of money on these things.
and I don't tell anybody how much.
I promise. What happens in a bar room stays in a bar room. But my point is you have to spend the money on the husbandry. You have to have good husbandry, and you have to have just certain backup, fail-safe equipment, and be prepared to use it. And I think a generator, really, for all of us, is one of them.
Yeah, my first generator was tiny, and I literally only had it to run my incubator if there was a problem.
There you go.
Because the eggs are more sensitive than.
That was my first generator too.
Yeah.
A very small one for the incubator.
Yep. And if you had the average keeper, if they had an incubator and a couple snakes and a small generator, you could stick your adult animals in tubs, put it in your incubator.
Oh yeah, you could.
And set the temperature at whatever you wanted, and you could keep them in there for weeks if you had to.
Yeah, you could do that. I'm glad. Yeah, you can. So you guys killed that topic. So the next question is on genetics, right? So you guys both keep things that are very different genetically. Bill, you're working with a lot of designer blood, and Ryan is a true blue locality guy. It seems like most of the time, at least that's what he got kicked out of the MVF for. So
that's a long time ago.
So my question is, can you guys explain, what you've seen over the years in terms of size to ratio of parents as far as genetics, the ratio of exceptionally healthy animals compared to sickly animals, and early signs that an animal will be healthy in the long run or problematic in the long run. And you guys could also talk about localities and the designers and how that influence works as well.
I think we're gonna have to. He'll have to talk about the designers.
Right.
And I'll have to talk.
Absolutely. It's a great topic. We'll definitely get two perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll let you go first, Bill.
Well, I think that there's definitely more fragility in designer animals than locality animals, and I'm not talking about locality animals that you have the same grandparents, same parents, all the way down, like without any kind of outcrossing, obviously. But I think designer animals just from what I see, tend to be a little more fragile. Whether it's more difficult, get them eating. Maybe you have less that will pip but not come out of the egg. I certainly had a clutch this year. You know, we talked about the prolapse and a significant number of animals from one clutch. I had a clutch of 12 babies and 7 of them prolapsed. None of them survived. So again, that's a genetic issue. Even though there was no, it wasn't like it was a cousin breeding or siblings breeding or anything like that. They were completely outcrossed. But it was a relatively high-end designer clutch of just some crazy genotype and phenotype babies that came out of the clutch. So I think they're more fragile. I think there's an increased incidence of genetic abnormalities. If you have it, but again, so limited. You know, even in my experience with my animals here, the vast majority. I'm talking about one clutch. Okay, the vast majority of the designer babies I've hatched here have been, very, just very robust and have gone on to do well, and it's really not significant issues other than feeding. And I think we can all agree that whether it's a locality clutch or designer clutch, you're going to have some babies that are difficult feeders. And I tell people all the time, it's 20% of my babies that give me 90% of my problem. The other
it's like soldiers.
Yeah.
It's like soldiers.
Just like people.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of the babies that I hatch eat on the first or second time with minimal manipulation. So that's the designer side of the story.
What about size, Bill?
Size?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I just have not had a lot of disparity in the size of my clutches. The vast majority of them seem to really have pretty normal or pretty average sized babies. The occasional runt here and there, but they really been really pretty what you would expect, I think.
Okay, we'll pass it on to you, Ryan.
Well, I'm actually surprised that my assumption would be that the captive bred from multiple generation of the quote unquote designer animals. I figured those babies would be easier to get started than the wild, than like F1 babies, because they've got multiple generation of animals that produced them that had to learn to eat mice off the bat. So
absolutely, I agree, Ryan. I don't think that getting babies established was a significant difference. I just think like the experience of I just seem to have like babies that'll pip and crawl halfway out of the egg and die.
Honestly, I get that too.
Yeah,
and that's why I went back to vermiculite for cooking. I haven't had that problem since.
What do you think the difference is?
I think that chondro eggs like to be dry, but I mean, if you get them wet, they die, obviously. But I think that they still need some moisture, and I think cooking them on a grate, I think it just dries them out. I don't think they're getting enough moisture. So I was shocked because I've had way more incidences of babies going full term and dying than I would ever care to admit. It was the most frustrating thing about the species complex.
Yeah, it's really frustrating for when that to happen. Even when
I don't think the locality stuff, the designer stuff, I don't believe that either of those. I think it's a universal thing no matter what you're doing.
Yeah. I'll agree. It's really one of the most frustrating things is when the animal pips, sticks its head out, looks perfect, and it crawls halfway out of the egg. You check on it the next day, and it's like, what the hell happened?
Yeah, rips its umbilicus off and just keels over. Yeah, no, I went back to I tried maternal last year, or well, I guess it's 2024 now. 2022, I did all my clutches maternal. I was so freaking tired of babies going full term and dying, and I pitched a shit sandwich doing that too. But 2023, I hatched every egg but one on vermiculite. I just went back to the basics, back to how I started, and I'm not going back to no substrate again. So that's just my experience. But
So,
other than that,
what would you say? Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
I just I'm firmly in the camp that there's at least 4 species of chondros, and I breed them accordingly. For I don't look down on anybody who does whatever they're going to do. That's fine. It's just for me, I like them how nature intends them. So that's just where my interest lies. I can appreciate what you guys are doing. Some of the snakes are pretty wild looking, but it's just not my jam.
But I do got this question for you, Ryan.
All right.
So when you are strictly hatching locality animals, from the sounds of it, it sounds to be, just as consistent as designers. But what do you see as far as problematic animals that just become more problematic over time? Because you're raising these animals to adults in a lot of cases for you. And Bill, same question for you.
Yeah, for me,
Question.
I mean, I've gotten a lot of flack for this over the years, but I usually don't go to extraordinary measures to save a baby. I kind of feel there's a response. I mean, we're in a way we're domesticating these animals. Even if you're a locality guy, you're trying to take a snake that wants to do one thing, and you're trying to bend it to do what you want it to do, i.e., eat pinkies when it wants to eat lizards, stuff like that. I'm a firm believer in if you save crappy eating babies and people raise those up and breed them, they're going to make crappy eating babies. That's just, I think years ago, people did experiments with gray banded king snakes, and there was a huge correlation to if the babies ate pinkies readily, their babies ate pinkies readily, and the more you did that, the more entrenched it got. I have found the worst babies I ever had were Kofi out babies. Those were just a complete and utter nightmare. They absolutely humbled me. I think I only saved 1 or 2, and it was just a freaking nightmare. They just didn't want anything to do with anything. They were just the worst.
So these are imported babies, or these
No, they were babies I produced. I mean, you would open the tub and they would sit there, and they were just like a spring. If you even came near them or touched them, they would fling themselves. Half the time, they would fling themselves. You'd have to catch them so they didn't fall to the floor. They didn't, they wouldn't bite. They would bite at everything, but they would never even think about wrapping it up. And I force fed. I only got 1 that ever ate on its own right off the bat. I force fed the other 5 or 6, but eventually I was like, these guys just aren't destined to be in captivity. So I have let snakes. I'll force feed them a couple times, and if they don't start eating, I'm not going to be the guy that force feeds them for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. I feel kind of that we're creating a future problem with that animal. And, I know a lot of people would think that's terrible, but some animals are not cut out for captivity or how we want to do it in captivity.
So Bill, what is your perspective on that?
Well, I agree with Ryan on a lot of what he said. Some of these they're just not meant to be. And I would consider a relatively short fuse on when to call it quits. Having said that, there are a few animals that came from parents that looked so phenotypically awesome that I give those motherfuckers mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. To try to give them one more day on this planet. Just trying to save it. And if their babies eat like shit, I do the same to their babies.
Hey, that's a perspective, and you know, I think that's what we want to hear. Two different perspectives that were similar. Um,
But I will say that the vast majority, I'm pretty good now, and I know Ryan is too, about picking out the ones that have a chance, and I'll give those a chance. And I'm pretty good at picking out the ones that really don't have a realistic chance. And that's one of the hardest things, especially with new keepers and new breeders. Again, to go back to this thing that, like, no matter what happens, you think it's your fault. You know, as a new keeper or a new breeder, and you know, I'm just to the point now, and I'm sure Ryan's the same place, that you know, I give them every chance to make it, and if they don't make it, I know it's not on me. You know, it just wasn't meant to be, and so I sleep fine. The first few years I produced chondros, I would lay awake at night wondering what I had done wrong. You know, that this one wouldn't eat, or this happened or that happened. And now you just know, and I just know that some of them weren't meant to be, and you know, it is what it is.
There's definitely a brutal side to raising animals, whether it's cattle, whether it's cats, dogs, birds. You know, the snakes are no different. There's, you know, there could be genetic problems with the babies that we don't even. They might look fine, and there's something
Something
that's
wrong.
just not right with them, and all the force feeding them in the world isn't going to save them.
Yeah.
So I tend to, you know, I usually have a rough. If the snake responds to force feeding and I feel like I'm getting closer with it eating on its own, I'll keep going. But if I feel like it's just not going anywhere, then I'll usually just give that snake to a lizard. But I'm fairly good at starting them, so it's not like it's something that's happening a lot. But
no, I believe you. I know both you guys, and I've personally seen Bill and the care that he puts into taking care of babies. So I don't doubt you guys for a second. So we'll get into topic 6. So you guys both have massive snake collections. And one of the things with people is they're always trying to figure out how to do things better. So could you go through, you know, the care routines that aren't necessarily the normal feeding and things like that you have to put in to taking care of your massive collections that you perform daily, weekly, monthly, or even yearly, that you have to do to keep the entire collection going. And we will start with Ryan.
I don't know. I would say, you know, the biggest thing is being able to read your animals. And usually that you have to look at them a lot to notice when something's slightly different, because sometimes it's pretty subtle. I think the best keepers are the keepers that can pick up on those cues. There's a lot of decent people, you know, there's a lot of people that keep stuff with a recipe, is like I like to say. There's a lot of guys that can keep stuff if they follow a recipe, but there's not a lot of chefs. And the guys who can, you know, make a good meal without a recipe, those are the guys that are the most successful. And usually that just means looking at your snakes and trying to pick up on things that are different. Other than that, basic, you know, changing waters if it's fouled, going through, you know, spot cleaning or cleaning the whole cage, depending on what kind of substrate you're using. And then just for me, I mean, just I do this for a living, so I can be in there all the. I mean, I can go out there, tool around, come inside, go out, tool around, and get a good idea of what these snakes are doing more than a lot of people have the luxury of. I understand that, but the biggest thing is, you know, just being able to read your animals and understand what they're saying with their behaviors. But it can be difficult trying to keep a large, diverse collection. But most pythons need roughly the same care. So it gives you the ability to have a lot of pythons. There's usually just minor things that separate one thing from another. So the general care is remarkably similar for all these species. Um, it's the little 1% things that make the difference between breeding them and not breeding them.
Okay, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to echo a lot of what Ryan had to say. I think it's easy to get caught up in the size of a collection, and I think a lot of people get behind the eight ball numbers. And it's easy to amass a large python collection in a relatively short period of time, especially if you're breeding them. So I would say really watch your numbers. Don't let that get over your head, where you can't really, keep a close eye on all of your animals. And like Ryan said, I'm lucky enough to be able to do this full time. I'm out here 6 or 7 days a week. Number of hours a day. I'm able to keep a close eye on my animals. And a lot of people have to go to work every day, and they come home from their regular job and then, they're taking care of their animals. So I think smaller is better for most people. Keep that collection small. And that way it doesn't seem like work, too, I mean, this is supposed to be fun. So keep your numbers small and, like Ryan said, the obvious stuff with fresh water and husbandry and stuff like that. The one thing that Christian Stewart taught me when I first started keeping chondros a long, long time ago, he had a temp gun in his back pocket always. And he was temp gunning everything. And, I think in green trees in particular, that's important. It's important if your hot spot is 82 or 80. I mean, 88 or 80 degrees, and I can tell you just in different times of the year here during the summer, I need to adjust my thermostats because just, when it's 110 degrees outside, my temperatures have to be set differently than when it's 30 degrees outside. And that's even in a very well controlled, environment like I have here in my facility. So measure those temperatures, have a temp gun, and you have a thermostat that goes out. A lot of times you're not going to know it unless you're measuring the temps. When the animal gets sick, it's too late. So keep that temp gun, measure those temps, not infrequently.
Yep, the ounce of prevention worth the pound, worth more than the pound of the cure.
Yeah.
So with that being said, do you guys have things with your collections that you put yourself on the timer when it changed, like bulbs for lights or things like that that you have to go through and do them all?
Me personally, the ceramic heat emitters almost never burn out, and I almost never use them, so they really never burn out. And my lights in my room, I replace them just when they're LED lights. They tend to last a long time, but if they start flickering or something, I'll replace them. But other than that, I don't use the way I do it. I do not use a bunch of auxiliary heat sources. I try to limit that as much as possible, and it's just what I do for me. And I think part of it is because I have a large collection. It makes it easier for me to not have to be quite as on top of it as like what Bill's describing. And so I'm basically, if it's hot out, everything's off, just ambient. And in the wintertime, it's mostly off. Usually, maybe they'll have a small basking spot during the day, and that's it. So even if I had thermostat failures, other than the room, if the room thermostat failed, it takes a lot longer for the room to have a problem because of the volume than an individual cage.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So yeah, we can move on to the next topic. So the next topic is cost versus reward. So keeping chondros is not cheap. From getting chondros, shipping chondros, maintaining chondros. So this could just be anything. So what are things that the reward far outweighs the cost, and what are things that the cost is far greater than the reward, and what are things in terms of the cost directly affected by the quality. Rodents, and buying rodents, like you buy good rodents, you pay a little bit more, but your animals don't sporadically die, or just random things like that. So we'll start with Bill there.
Yeah, I think it's this is a classic example of you get what you pay for in most situations. And I think Ryan, with his experience with imported animals, I think even he would say, you're starting behind the eight ball. If you're an inexperienced green tree keeper and you go to a local show and you buy an expo animal from somebody who obviously didn't produce it, and you bring it home and you set it up in inferior housing, you're really behind the eight ball there, and you're probably going to struggle to get that $350 animal to thrive. I can tell you the opposite. If you, on your first green tree, if you decide you're going to dedicate, the funds, and I'm going to say, you're looking at probably $1,000 to get a U.S. captive bred animal from a reliable source. And then you're looking at probably, you could make a tub setup that thing for less than $100, and put it in a very, maybe $100, $150 if you use a thermostat, into a very, very nice enclosure or tub that animal's going to thrive in. So, $1,000 is a lot of money, but if you really want to go the distance and you think you're in it for the long haul, these animals, you're going to get years and years of enrichment out of the animal. And so, I mean, that's how I would go about, getting my first animal. And I think the reward there far exceeds the monetary, value of the animal and the housing.
Yeah, I know for me personally, the failures over the years, just adds to the sweetness of success. And yes, as Bill stated, I wouldn't recommend the average person, especially a new person, to go buy imported snakes. My interest in locality / the different species, whatever you want to call it, has made it to where I really, over the years, I didn't have a lot of choices. There wasn't people breeding animals that I frankly wanted. So I had to develop the skills to establish imported snakes. And, I find it not incredibly challenging now, but it wasn't without its issues over the years. Getting to the point to figure it out. And so, yes, I would definitely recommend people start with captive bred from a breeder directly, do what they tell you to do. And then oftentimes, these things there's some pretty straightforward guidelines that'll get you pretty good success. You don't have to have everything, doesn't have to be super fancy and crazy. But when you do buy something, like if you buy a thermostat, get a good thermostat. That's where you're, money ahead, buy a Herpstat, buy, whatever quality thermostat, so when you do spend your money, spend it wisely. And then there's some things that's a waste of money and some things that aren't. And that's a subjective matter too. Obviously, I've joked in my snake room, I could probably breed chondros in a 5-gallon bucket, but Is that going to work for everybody? No. But the way I do it, I could put a couple sticks in there and it would probably live just fine, reproduce. But most people would find that difficult.
And Ryan makes a great point. I mean, listen, today, we're utilizing the technology, right? I mean, today they make incredible thermostats. They make incredible heat panels or heat sources that I have some stuff I've had for 10, 15 years I've never replaced.
Yep.
Still going as strong as it did the day I bought it. So, like Ryan said, get good husbandry stuff, spend $1,000 on an animal. Don't chintz out on the thermostat or the caging that you're going to put it in. If you just, again, this is my mantra. You get the right snake from the right person, put it in the right box, and you got a 99% chance you and that animal are going to have a great time.
Yeah. But it's even like you said, Bill, you can use a $6 tub and a couple scraps of melamine and a little piece of heat tape and just buy a real nice thermostat.
Yeah.
And you'll probably have a ton of success with a Neo, from somebody.
Absolutely.
But, you don't have to start off with the big, fancy. Usually that's a recipe for disaster with a Neo anyways.
You're right.
But it's,
simpler the better.
Yeah. For me anyways, personally, I'm probably the most simplistic keeper you could possibly talk to. I try to limit every variable to the most basic. What does it need? What does it not need? And I've just broken it down to the few absolutely necessary things, and I don't mess around with the other things.
So, as far as it goes with other things, besides husbandry and buying animals, how do you feel about, like going back to people being cheap with food sources and feeders?
I raise my own feeders. I haven't bought a feeder in since probably 2001. So I don't. That's I guess I shouldn't say that. I've bought quail and chickens to feed other snakes, but any rodent I've breed myself.
That's nice. That's a nice thing to have. That confidence, that reliability. And again, we're talking about opposites here. I'm the complete opposite. I've never bred a rodent in my life. I've been at the mercy of rodent companies, now over 20 years. And, it's super important that you have a consistent, nutritious source. And I think there's a lot of good companies out there that can provide that. I've never just had like an experience where I've fed 100 animals and I come out the next day and like 30 of them are dead from just some terrible food source that they've gotten a hold of. I mean, I just haven't had that experience. So, but again, I'm not looking for the cheapest rodents I can find. I'm looking for a consistent, reliable source of trust.
Yeah, I think that's important.
I've gotten some rodents locally, and they were all already frozen. And I opened the bag, and all you could smell was urine.
Mm.
So, like, I did a couple rounds of feeding with those things, and I was just like, "Nah, I'm tired of washing these things," and I just threw them out.
Yeah.
I was like, "This is not good. Just throw them out."
I mean, I think your gut will tell you. When you look at a frozen rodent, or even you smell a rodent, you'll know, when it's like something's not right. Appearance, smell, consistency, all those things are pretty good indicators.
Yeah, definitely go with your gut in that situation. If you have any doubt,
throw it out. If you have any doubt, throw it out.
Yep.
Especially when you de-thaw them and they start bloating. This is like, no, I'm not getting this thing.
Dude, where are you getting your
I
rodents?
was gonna say, wow.
Dude,
Man,
I can give you a cold-blooded cafe coupon code, man.
No, so I needed I needed a bunch of hoppers at one point in time, and it was somebody locally that had them,
Yeah.
and I bought them and I put it in the water to de-thaw it, and it started bloating. I was just like, this shit gotta go. I'm not
Yeah,
using
that's
this
weird.
shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know what was wrong with it. No, I know that, Pat. That's why I didn't feed the fucking rodent.
Pat's,
Um,
Pat's pearls. That's what I call those.
so you guys killed that topic. Uh, so the last topic, and then we'll get to you guys could just free talk it. But mentoring. So I know you guys had great mentors. I've heard you guys both talk about them. People that helped you out. So how were you mentored, and what are your feelings about it now? Um, and the biggest question is, how do you at this point in time choose who you actually want to mentor? Bill, yours is already here, little Alum. And how do you bridge the gap between the things that your mentors taught you and things that you learned through your own separate experiences? And we'll start with Ryan.
Well, I had amazing mentors. I had a lot of people I really looked up to. I was very much. I think half the fun of keeping reptiles to me is learning about them, and so I was the king of asking 50 people, 100 people, anybody who would talk to me. I would ask them, all the series of questions and compare and contrast, what one person's doing for another. But for me personally, Dave and Tracy Barker, they set the bar for me. Um, they were the people I most looked up to, and I was very fortunate to befriend them. And still to this day, I talk to Tracy quite regularly, and they've been amazingly gracious people. I wouldn't have aspired to breed all the different species that I have if it wasn't for the incredible work they did. And so I've had Casey Lazik's been a great mentor and friend to me. I've had Nick Mutton lives close to me. We came up together. Um, I don't know if we were really mentors to each other, but we were, had a friendly competition, rivalry kind of, back and forth deal that pushed us both, I believe, to be better keepers than we might have otherwise been. And yeah, you know, it's amazing to have good people in your corner. And as far as taking on people, um, I've had people over the years that might say I've mentored them. I've tried not to, act like, um, I know everything and tell people this is how you got to do it because, frankly, the way I do it, it's real difficult for other people to do, and it at times it makes it challenging for me to try to tell people what to do, um, and so that makes it difficult. And then I get a lot of people who will ask me stuff and they've already talked to 25 other people, and then they end up just arguing with me and trying to convince me I'm doing it wrong. And so that usually is a pretty big turnoff. Um, but for me, I'm happy to talk to anybody, and even if you think I'm full of shit, that's fine. You can talk to me, and you just don't need to tell me you think I'm full of shit. It's
Well, we know that doesn't stop Bill.
it is what it is. But I love talking.
I'm telling you, man.
Yeah, I love talking with Chondro people. I like how we do. I'm glad we all do things differently. I think it would
Yeah,
be really boring if we didn't. If we didn't have these subjects to banter about and to try to improve, because the reality is all of our little arguments and all of our disagreements, the underlying premise of all of these is we're trying to get better. We're seeking perfection, and it's probably an impossibility. But all of these debates and differences and our strong emotional feelings, all of these things tie into the reality is that we just love these animals so much, and we want to do the best we can to produce them. And it just is what it is. So I never take a lot of this stuff personally. I'm happy to go back and forth with people and have a good time with it. It doesn't have to be so serious, but I like talking to people who like to learn and listen, and they can challenge me all they want. That's fine too. It's because if you're not challenging somebody's ideas, then all you're doing is blindly following them, and that can lead to its own problems as well.
You better not say that in the Facebook groups. All right, so Bill, what about you? Because I know that you got some high caliber mentors,
Yeah.
and you're raising up alum right now. So we want to hear from you.
Well, I'll talk about mentorship in a minute, but I just agree with a lot of what Ryan had to say. I mean, think about it. I think we can all agree that keeping these things is really pretty easy, right? I mean, it's not rocket science to keep a green tree. When you start talking about reproducing them, then we have all these little nuances where, I did it this way, so it's the right way. I incubated this way. I did this. I did that. When was the last time you heard a ball python podcast talk about how to produce ball pythons?
I haven't heard one ever.
Never. I haven't heard one, in 20 years, like, oh, this is how you, breed ball pythons, because it's become very, like Ryan said, it's become very recipe oriented. And we're not that way with green trees yet. With green trees, there's more of a, there's just more to it. Takes more experience, more feeling, more getting to know the animals. And so I think, that's a very special part of that. And there's a part of me that hopes that never goes away, because it's really just a lot of fun figuring these things out. And the lows can be super low, but the highs can be higher than anything I've experienced other than the birth of my children and marrying my wife. I mean, I have had so many huge emotional swings with these things, and I hope it keeps out. I hope it keeps that way. I hope it doesn't become recipe cookie cutter to breed these things. But concerning mentorship, of course, I mean, it's really the most important tool a relatively new person can have coming in, into taking care of these animals and breeding them. I'm kind of like Ryan. I think that, too many chefs can spoil the dinner. And I've had the same experience that he's had. Somebody will ask me something, and I'll reply with what has worked for me. And then their immediate response is, well, Patrick does it different. Well, Patrick said to do this, like, oh, so you're talking to Patrick and me and how many other people, I mean, I get, like, everybody needs to get something that works for them. Most of the time that happens through experience, other people's experience, and then, you choose what works best for you. But most frustrating thing as a mentor is when somebody asks you something or and then they want to argue about it because your advice or reply is different than what they've heard from 3 other mentors. So I think getting a mentor, especially that's in your location, or, I think Ryan's mentorship in Idaho would be a lot different than mine in South, in the South, in Texas, where our climates are completely different. So I think, if you can get a mentor that's close to you or geographically close, I think that helps.
Yeah, this area is not a bastion of herp keepers, so my opportunities to mentor locals is very, very, very limited. Even if it was something that I really wanted to do a lot of, there's not a lot of people around here to do it. So
yeah,
you guys definitely have a bigger herp community down in Texas.
For sure. and most mentors can't be. You mentioned Alex, who's I'm much more than a mentor to him. We have a much different, better, deeper relationship than just a mentee mentor relationship. But he lives 20 minutes from me.
I know.
That can't be the circumstances in 95% of mentor-mentee green tree relationships.
Well, I think the reality, I'm trying to think if there's any person I've ever mentored that didn't just turn out to be a really good friend. Like it almost, if you spend any time, invested in another human being and they share like interests and common interests, it seems like it just naturally changes from a mentor-mentee situation to you're just friends.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, some of the best people in my life are from this hobby, and I wouldn't, and a lot of them I can talk to, and we don't even talk about snakes half the time. We talk about everything else because some of my greatest friends are all from this industry now, and it's just how it progresses most of the time.
Well, I think that over time, what you come to gather is that, when you're dealing in this community, because it's still rather small, the people that stay around, and the people you usually talk to, you're actually sharing some information with them, and they're sharing information with you. So a relationship does form.
Yeah.
Um, um, but yeah, we can keep going on this topic. I gotta take 1 second. But right now we will do a freestyle portion of it where you guys can virtually go back to any topic that you want to, and we can just discuss that further. I know you guys have very different views about breeding because I heard this, I've seen it with my own two eyes. So
About breeding or feeding? What?
about putting gravid females in drawers.
Oh.
Well,
for me, it just turned out.
Forgive me,
I was sick of having females dump their eggs all over. And I just got tired of it.
Well, and I do something similar. I utilize a nest box, but I'll lock them in that nest box.
Yeah, I was never good at
you got a lock on it.
Masking tape or big tape. But yeah, I'll lock them in because if I see them, and I know they're getting close and they're roaming all over the place, they're in the nest box or out of the nest box. I of course have pulled perches, at this point, but I still don't like them because Ryan's right. They'll scatter eggs. They'll lay them in the water dish.
Yeah.
So I'll lock them in that egg box.
Yeah, I have a picture of an egg glued to the side of the wall.
What wall?
The wall of the cage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she must have laid it right up against the wall, and it didn't fall to the ground. It literally adhered to the wall. So I had snakes that would sit in their box for 3 weeks, never come out, and then the morning I find eggs everywhere, like she just couldn't.
Yeah.
And I just ultimately was like, you know what? I'm not even going to mess around with nest boxes. I just stick them in the Antarisa box, right next to the children's pythons, and they lay there. And now, ever since then, they're always perfectly coiled around their eggs. They just seem more content in that setup. I just don't give them the choices.
Yeah.
So it's just what works for me. But yeah, I know a lot of guys remove the perches, lock them in the box, or they make the whole cage floor, basically a nest box. Yeah. But again, I don't use the big heat panels and stuff. So I think that wouldn't work that good for me with the little ceramic heat emitter. They wouldn't be able to get warm enough. So for me, it was once they have I turn on a heat emitter once they ovulate for 12 hours off. And then once they have their pre-lay shed, they go into the Antarisa box.
Ryan, can you talk about maternal incubation that you tried out?
Oh, shit. I tried it years ago, the first time, and it went horrible. I was able to save, I think, 6 of the babies. I could smell that it wasn't going right. I pulled the eggs out, put them in the incubator, and I think I was able to save 6, I believe. That was my first experience with it. And then last year, or 2022, I tried 3 clutches. And the mothers, man, they laid beautiful eggs. They did what I thought was a great job. And I only ended up with two babies from one of them.
Damn.
So I don't know. I think if I had to do it over again, I would say my ambients were probably too cold. The humidity seemed fine. I think they just had to work too hard, and I think they just smothered the babies at the end. So
Bill,
I wanted those photos with the babies coming out.
God, there's nothing better, right?
I do have one photo with one little red baby coming out, but it wasn't as good of a photo as I was hoping for. So maybe I'll do it again.
so I got a question for Bill. Also, Bill, I want to let you know the baby that I got from you. It only shits in the water bowl. It never shits on the paper towel.
Outstanding.
That's not good.
Mayor toilet trains them, don't you know?
I train him that way, bro. I train him that way. You're welcome.
So my question
You just
for
got to
you,
watch
Bill,
out for kinks because he has to beat them to get them to do it. So
this is for both of you guys. So you guys both have like a remarkable flow of getting clutches and establishing them. Like you guys are almost automatic. You guys know exactly how to go through this because the amount of clutches that you guys can produce. So what did you have to do to get to this point to become so automatic? Was it just experience through the years? Did somebody else tell you how to do this? Because you guys are remarkable breeders.
well, I appreciate the sentiment.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. And I think if you look at, Ryan and I have a lot that we disagree on. We have a lot in common. I think one of the things we have in common is just experience with the animals, right? I mean, nobody's going to get these things, acquire a big collection, acquire somebody's collection. I could put my collection in the hands of somebody, and there's no way they'd be lucky if the animals survive, much less produce. And some of that is experience. And to me, some of that is just, I was talking with Alex about this just yesterday. Some of the fact that almost every single animal I have here was raised here. Either hatched here, or if not hatched here, I got them as a baby, as a neo or as a yearling. So I think when the animal grows up here and knows the environment, I think that gives you a head start in reproducing these things.
Yeah, I fully agree with the raising your snakes goes a long ways towards your future success.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not to say that I would never take on an adult female because I've done it before and I've had success doing it, but it would not be my first avenue of success. Like I'm going to get, a bunch of 3, 4-year-old, 5-year-old females, and then I'm going to breed them. To me, that's just not the way that you would do this if you wanted like long-term consistent success. So
yeah, even the imports, I don't buy big imports. I only get relatively small ones that have completed their color change, and then they're not sexually mature, and so they still grow up here, albeit they just didn't have the first couple, because it's usually three years after you get them before I even ever try to pair them. 3-4 years, so they grow up here.
Yep.
I've never had. I'm trying to think if I've ever gotten an adult female and had any success with it. I think twice, maybe out of 4 or 5 times. it's not. It's far from a sure thing.
Yeah. So I mean, I think so. Just even that, is so that's timing. It's time, and it's experience, right? I mean, I think that's it. There's nothing magical about it. It's not rocket science. It's just having the animals their most of their life and providing them to your environment and watching that animal and knowing that animal, and then 5 short years later you're parenting.
Yeah. I always liked the Barker's thing where they talked about the measure of experience in snake years. It's like how many chondros you have, for how many years have you had them, and those are how you measure your experience in snake years. Then it's like there really is there's no shortcut to having gone through good things, bad things, all the things. You just have to experience it. You have to know, you know, you have to be able to understand maybe what got you in a predicament, what got you out of a predicament, and most of that only comes with experience. You can talk to people till you're blue in the face, and at the end of the day, until you experience certain things, you won't know what to do unless it's happened to you before.
But
So,
isn't that one of the best things about green trees, though?
oh yeah, I mean, I like
I mean,
there is no shortcut. I wish I tried many times.
Yeah.
There is no shortcut.
Well, I think that in general, nobody. I don't think anybody has really had a lot of success for doing things very, very quickly with chondros. I haven't seen it, and I've only been around,
I
a
haven't
little over
seen
5 years. Yeah,
no shortcuts.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is there's a lot of people that, do amazing their first time and they probably think, "Oh, this is so easy." And then they tend to get humbled down the road. Again, it's just you got to experience lots of different things. And some people get lightning in a bottle and everything goes well for them, and other people, have to go about it the harder fashion for whatever reason, the school of hard knocks. But the
Yeah.
long-term consistency, that's the thing we all strive for, and it's a numbers game. You're not going to breed, 90% of them. It's just probably not going to happen. It just, at least it hasn't happened for me anyways. So you gotta adjust your expectations, and having a decent amount of animals, but like Bill said, not too many that it's too overwhelming. But I mean, you can be successful with one pair for sure, no doubt. But
Yeah.
you're going to gain more experience faster, with obviously just more animals.
Yeah, I mean that seems to be the way that it generally works. And one thing that I've seen over the years is that people that develop a plan and stick to the plan seem to be more successful than people that try to start things off in one way and they're constantly changing it. Um, and I don't know how much of that you guys seen. I've seen it a lot. Maybe it's my level of seeing people just add a whole bunch of things that may not necessarily be necessary, and things don't go as smoothly as you would think that they would. Um, but I don't know if you guys have seen any of that.
Oh, I've personally witnessed it. I've done it. I was listen. When I first started and I was trying to breed, rare species, hard to breed species. Man, you'd go through a breeding season, and the next year you would think it was my cage was totally wrong, my temperatures were totally wrong, and you would just constantly put that animal through hell, changing its environment over and over and over again. And the reality is that stuff you do when you're young and super ambitious. As I got older, I realized that if you do the same thing over and over again, usually the snake will eventually get on your program, And you can make minor tweaks, but big drastic changes are not typically the way to get something done.
I was lucky because I cut my teeth on ball pythons and carpet pythons. So I had a large number of both of those, and they taught me to be patient. They taught me basic husbandry, and they taught me, kind of like Ryan said, don't keep flipping the switch. And by the time I got green trees, I had devised a plan how I was going to keep them. And, 12, 13, 14 years later, that I haven't deviated, almost nothing from how I'm keeping them over 10 years ago. I've tweaked a few things, breeding them, establishing babies or whatever, but my housing, my temperatures, my whole way that I just interact with them really has changed very little in 12, 13 years.
Yeah, mine's changed quite a bit. The first pet python, I guess I take it back. The very first pet python I ever had was a big, huge wild ball python that a pet store gave me when I was probably, 12 or 13. And then when I was 18, I bought a Chondro. And I hadn't had a python in, years, but that's what I wanted. And so that's what I bought.
You tortured that poor thing, I'm sure.
Actually, that was a great snake. She laid 3 clutches for me. It was, it was definitely. She taught me a ton. She probably taught me more than any snake I've had since. I kept her in a 20-gallon fish tank on my nightstand when I first got her.
It's like a good first wife,
So. She went from my first apartment to my first house. I'm trying to think I think she lived to be 13 or 14 years old, laid 3 clutches.
Nice.
Good.
But yeah, I think it was 2001 I had she laid the first clutch for me. And I think it was like the 3rd species of python I had bred.
Yeah.
So
I got one last question for you too, because I know you guys differ on this one, and then we'll close it out. Ryan, you once said that you think that, and I might be wrong, but I think that you said that you don't think that you think that red babies are recessive, or there may not be many of them in the future. I know Bill is a big red baby guy.
Yeah, no, yellow babies are the mutation.
Okay.
The red is basically the relic ancestral form of color, and eventually, if you could fast forward millions of years, there probably won't be red babies in the wild. Nature is selecting against red babies.
Why do you say that if they're the natural?
Well, basically, the chondro's common ancestor was not green. It was a brown snake that probably had a brownish colored baby. And in the process of the snake becoming a brown snake to a green snake, the baby was a red baby. But biologically, that's not a very efficient color change to go from red to green. You had to have watched a yellow neo change. It's just a different process. It seems biologically much more streamlined, much more basic.
I watched it one time. I was amazed.
Of course, I'm surprised. You probably made you sick every day. But no, I think, and then the southern species, you already have. There are no red babies in any of the localities in the south, and you have a few areas in the north that appear to be almost predominantly yellow babies already. So there must be some biological advantage, because you can kind of anecdotally, it's pretty rare to import a wild one that proves to just be not het for yellow. It's pretty rare. And that's why you have the situation where people say red dominant or super red or whatever terms they want to use, because they want red to be the special thing. And the reality is, biologically speaking, yellow is the special thing, I guess, if a mutation is the special thing. But
Now,
Well-
Bill, it's your turn to wax poetically about red babies.
Time to go to work. Well, so yellow is definitely the special thing. Yellow is recessive.
yep.
Albino's recessive too, but you don't see the world taken over by albino specimens. So, you have what people call super red or red dominant, because you can have an animal that was red and breed it to an animal that was yellow, and all the babies are red.
Yeah, but that's simply just because that animal isn't het for yellow.
That's
It
right.
doesn't. But every
Absolutely.
baby it makes bred to a yellow, every one of those red babies is het.
Yeah, but every time those babies breed, only 1 out of 4 of the clutch is going to be yellow. The rest are going to be red.
Right, but that doesn't mean Mother Nature is doing it that way. If the survivability of yellow is higher, eventually over millions of years, yellow becomes the default normal, and you would have never known there was ever a red baby ever.
So you have some like scientific, research that would tell me that yellows survive over reds in nature.
No, I don't think. I think you can surmise that based on the fact that there is not red in the South, and that many of the localities or several of the localities in the North seem to be dominated already by yellow. If red offered an amazing advantage, then you wouldn't have yellow would never have become a thing. It would have never developed. It would have never been so prevalent.
You could say that. Well, you could say that about a lot of the ball python morphs that are recessive, but you don't see clowns just dominating, the ball python in Ghana, seeing clown ball pythons or albinos or whatever overtaking the natural.
No, but that's a deleterious mutation. That's a mutation that's not helping them survive. If it did help them to survive, then it would take over. And I mean, the reality is a red baby and a yellow baby in the wild grows up to be a green snake. So as far as the mutation goes, the mutation doesn't really, once it's a green snake sitting on a stick, the yellow baby or the red baby offers no advantage. There must be something that's happening when the snake is red or is yellow that is favoring yellow, and just barely, but it clearly must be something to that effect. And maybe it's as simple as how fast the color change is. Yellow animals change color quicker.
They do.
The red babies, and that's probably all as it boils down to, is during that long extended period where you're changing, you might be more vulnerable to predation. And so if a yellow baby just biologically goes from yellow to green much quicker, then it can get on with whatever advantages being green has, where a red baby won't have that.
We may need to check in part 2 of this show 10,000 years from now.
Well, 10,000 years probably won't be long enough either. You probably need
100? I'd go
probably
100.
need a couple million years.
But until that couple million years, I think we can all agree upon that just reds are better than yellow.
Well, I don't know if we can agree on that. I don't know if we can summarily just agree on that.
Catch him.
These are the same
I enjoy my red babies
conversations I have with Keno in the morning.
But the reality is if I had to keep one species of chondro, it would probably be viridis, and that's a yellow baby. So I would have to, go yellow.
Yeah, and I have to apologize to Mark because I know he's in the chats right now.
Yeah,
And Tucker too. Tucker's got a yellow baby of mine, and I do produce yellows, and I do love yellows too. Absolutely.
Well, I think if you look at the history of this, most yellow babies are consistently better looking adults.
What?
Really?
Yeah, I think it's far easier to predict how they're going to look. the majority,
sure.
the majority of
Where's the
designers.
fun in that?
Huh?
Where's the fun in that?
I'm just saying, if you want a nice, real bright green snake with blue pattern, that's your probably best bets to get that in the yellow.
Hell yeah, I agree.
If you want a muddy military green snake that doesn't have shit going on for it, get yourself a designer red, baby.
That's not true. Now we get personal.
Notice I said it a hybrid. It had to be a hybrid red baby, though. Those locality red babies blow those designer ones away.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ryan.
Oh God. Well, you know what? We've gone through the questions. We've gone through the loose part of the show. So I want to give you guys a chance to speak about whatever you guys want to speak about.
Well, I'll start, and I will just say that Ryan Young is probably the most knowledgeable snake person that I know. Patrick would be a close second, but I think I would give. I stand by my statement. Ryan is the most knowledgeable snake person I know. He has produced in captivity more species than anyone else on the planet.
Pythons, not snakes. Pythons.
Python.
Yeah. There's people that have bred a lot more colubrids than I've bred python.
All right. So I stand by my words. He's incredibly knowledgeable about pythons, and I consider him a good friend. And he is somebody that if I have a question, I will, even though, it seems like we keep things maybe, differently, I wouldn't hesitate to go to him and to ask him advice about an issue, a problem, or an idea. So,
wow. Well, like I said, man, Bill, means a lot coming from you. I look up to what you're doing. You're doing amazing stuff over there, and I'm very humbled by those comments. Means a lot to me. I like the Chondro community a lot for a lot of the guys that I've actually had the chance to get to know because we can banter back and forth and give each other shit and have a good time. And ultimately the goal of it is friendship and to actually learn something. And despite all of my successes and my failures, I constantly am striving to learn something, all the time. I never rest on my laurels. I never think I've got it figured out. I think that's a recipe for disaster and constantly. So I learn every day from all these other people. I pick up little cues that they're doing and I adopt them. And it's a good hobby that we have. And there's great people. The four people here, I think we're all good people having a good time. Brings us together from all these different walks of life. I've traveled the world looking for pythons. It's given me many gifts, and the best people in my life are all reptile people. So I can't imagine life without this hobby.
Kind words from both of y'all.
Tears. Well, I think that this was fun. And I appreciate you guys both for coming on. And even though you guys' styles are different, like you're very similar. And I think that's important for newer people to see. We're not all doing something crazy different. A little bit different, but it's not crazy different. And we have to interact with each other to have some level of success. And I think that's what people are figuring out. And it's just it doesn't have to be like a Facebook comment section where people are arguing all the time. People can genuinely learn from each other.
True.
But yeah. You guys got anything else?
No, I'm good.
I'm pretty good. I think it was a great episode, man. I just really enjoyed it. I like talking to both of you guys because I know where your passion lies, and you're out here and there every week on Tuesday doing this. So I know it's important. I know it's important for you.
Yeah, no, I had a blast meeting two of you in 2023. Hopefully, we'll get the other one, get to meet you one of these days.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah.
I might pull up
yeah,
to Idaho.
I was extremely grateful to get to hang out with you too and get to know you guys.
That was fun. Next time you guys gotta come with us to get barbecue though.
That was a long man. You guys drove all the way back to where I was staying that night. Like I was drove home, drove back. It was crazy.
Well, it was okay.
I just want to go to. I want to go to Buc-ee's with Sal.
Listen, I don't listen. I'm gonna tell you. Listen, Sal didn't take off one opportunity to take a picture, hold something up the entire time. Listen, you
or
should
a
see
video.
Sal trying on. Yeah, you should see him trying on cowboy hats, man. You should have seen. You should have seen Sal. And he was asking a guy there questions. The guy was just like, "I don't fucking know, man. This is Buc-ee's. I doesn't work here." So that was fun. But yeah, I talked to Sal today. He was talking about coming back again in September. I know I got a wedding to go to in September, and I got to figure out when it is. I know where it is. I have figured out. But yeah, hopefully we get to do it again. And that's pretty much all I got. What you got, Keno?
No, man, Bill, Ryan, thanks for giving us y'all time.
Oh man,
Really opened our eyes.
I'm grateful to get to. I mean, I don't get to hang out and talk chondros with people very much.
Yeah.
So
especially Bill. The only time I think we talked to Bill was at the Chondro, the Texas Legends.
Yeah, well,
so Bill was able to get a little bit more in depth today.
Yeah,
no, Bill's been on. He had a solo episode.
Yeah, I've been on here before.
Oh damn, that's IG. You're right.
One of the early episodes.
Brother,
he did an early episode.
The IG is
it was early, man.
Hey, Bill, are you gonna get the gang together, do Texas Legends Part 2?
Yeah, that's gonna happen.
Okay, just let me know, and we'll figure it out. But yeah, I think that's it for us. It went a little bit over, but it was a good time. I'm glad that Alum showed up too.
With these gentlemen, it was worth it.
Yeah. Alum left the B channel and headed on over here with Varsity.
Listen, that channel, is that channel, and this channel is this channel. That's all it is. But we had a good time, and Marshall will be here next week, so we get to get Marshall.
Yeah, I've wanted to meet Marshall for a long time. I've talked to him over the internet for a long time, and I have yet to meet him. So
collecting music.
These days, I gotta figure out where he's gonna be.
Well, Texas happens to be right between Idaho and Birmingham.
I was driving home from Florida a couple of years ago, and I went not far from his house, and I was like, "Man, I should have stopped over, but
you should have."
I had a 3-day drive to get home, so it was like, may as well just keep pedal to the metal.
Well, I'll take this just to say the next party here is going to be in April.
Okay,
that'll be the next. Okay. It's not the Arlington NARBC. It's now the Dallas NARBC because they're moving venues. That'll be April 2024. So I'll have the event to get together here Friday night.
Okay.
Well, I'll see if I can get out there at least for one of them this year.
I'll see you and you and you all there.
Same thing.
Yeah,
we just gotta get you to go to Australia.
I guess I was told I gotta go, so I guess I'll be there.
Australia, yeah, let's meet there.
But yeah, this has been it for the Chondro Bar Room, the first Keeper Clash. It was amazing, and thank everybody for showing up. And you guys have a good night.
Thanks
for having us.
Thank y'all for coming.